It was the kind of summer day that felt like a thick, warm blanket draped over the small town of Willow Creek. Humidity clung to the air, making the leaves on the ancient oak trees hang heavy and still. For the annual Miller family reunion, however, no amount of heat could dampen the boisterous spirit. The sprawling backyard of Aunt Carol's house was a kaleidoscope of picnic blankets, collapsible chairs, and the vibrant chaos of children chasing each other with water guns. The scent of grilled burgers mingled with Aunt Carol's infamous potato salad, creating a comforting, familiar aroma that had defined summers for as long as I could remember. I, Liam, usually loved these gatherings. They were a rare chance to reconnect with cousins I only saw once a year, to hear my grandmother's endless stories, and to simply exist within the comforting embrace of a large, albeit sometimes overwhelming, family. This year, however, a knot of anxiety had been tightening in my stomach since I'd received the invitation, the source of my unease, my Uncle David. Uncle David, my mother's older brother, was a man who had, by all accounts, made it. He owned a successful chain of car dealerships, lived in a sprawling mansion an hour away, and drove a different luxury car every time I saw him. He exuded an air of self-importance, his booming laugh often dominating conversations, and his anecdotes invariably circled back to his own accomplishments and generosity. He was the family patriarch in his own mind, often dispensing unsolicited advice and, more often than not, reminding everyone of his supposed contributions to their lives. I was 22, freshly graduated from university, and bone-tired. My degree in mechanical engineering was clutched tightly in my hand, a symbol of 4 years of relentless effort, late-night study sessions fueled by cheap coffee, and a constant, gnawing financial struggle. I'd done it, though. I'd graduated with honors, a feat I was immensely proud of, especially considering the circumstances. The afternoon wore on, a predictable rhythm of eating, chatting, and dodging rogue frisbees. I was deep in conversation with my cousin Sarah about her new job when Uncle David's voice, amplified by his proximity and his inherent need to be heard, cut through the general din. "Liam, there you are, my boy," he boomed, clapping me on the shoulder with a force that nearly dislodged my collarbone. He was holding a glass of iced tea, his face flushed from the heat and perhaps a little too much self-congratulation. "Looking good, son. Must be all that higher education finally settling in, eh?" I offered a polite, strained smile. "Hey, Uncle David, good to see you," he beamed, turning to the small cluster of family members who had gathered around, drawn by his volume. My parents, sitting nearby, shifted uncomfortably. They knew. They always knew. "You know," Uncle David continued, his voice dropping conspiratorially, though still loud enough for half the yard to hear, "it's a real pleasure to see young Liam here doing so well, a fine young man, truly. And, if I do say so myself, I'm rather proud of the part one played in that, helping him get through university." He puffed out his chest, a self-satisfied smirk playing on his lips. "Yes, sir. Paying for his college tuition was one of the best investments I ever made. Seeing him graduate, knowing I helped make that happen. Well, it warms an uncle's heart, doesn't it?" A hush fell over our immediate vicinity. My cousin Sarah's eyes widened, darting from Uncle David to me. My mother's hand flew to her mouth, and my father's jaw tightened. The air grew thick, not just with humidity, but with unspoken tension. For a moment, I just stared at him, the sheer audacity, the blatant fabrication, the casual cruelty of his words, especially after everything I had endured. It wasn't just a lie, it was a deliberate erasure of my struggle, a theft of my achievement. My exhaustion, my sacrifice, my pride, all of it was being casually dismissed and repackaged as his generosity. A slow, cold anger began to simmer within me, quickly boiling over into a quiet, resolute fury. The smile that had been plastered on my face earlier vanished, replaced by something sharper, more direct. "That's weird, Uncle David," I said, my voice surprisingly calm, cutting through the silence like a freshly sharpened knife. Every eye was now on me, because I've been working 3 jobs to survive. The words hung in the air, stark and undeniable. The collective gasp from the surrounding family members was almost audible. Uncle David's self-satisfied smirk faltered, then dissolved completely. His face, moments ago flushed with pride, turned a mottled red. His eyes, usually so confident, darted around, searching for an escape, a denial, anything. "What?" he stammered, his booming voice reduced to a pathetic squeak. "Liam, what are you talking about? Don't be ridiculous." "Ridiculous," I repeated, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "Is it ridiculous that I worked at the campus library from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. before classes, then waited tables at the Hungry Bear from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m., and spent my weekends delivering pizzas for Pizza Palace just to pay for my tuition, my books, my rent, and my food? Is that what you call ridiculous, Uncle David?" My voice, though still quiet, carried an undeniable weight, a raw honesty that silenced even the chirping of the crickets. My mother had tears in her eyes, silently shaking her head. My father, usually a man of few words, stepped forward, his hand resting on my shoulder in a gesture of support. "Liam, don't be disrespectful," Uncle David tried, attempting to regain his bluster, but it was too late. The damage was done. The carefully constructed facade of his benevolence was crumbling before everyone's eyes. "Disrespectful?" I challenged, taking a step closer. "You just stood here, in front of our entire family, and took credit for my 4 years of blood, sweat, and tears. You claimed you paid for my education when you didn't contribute a single cent. Not a dime, Uncle David, not one." The silence that followed was deafening. My younger cousins, who had been giggling moments before, now stared, wide-eyed. My grandmother, usually so placid, looked utterly bewildered, her gaze flicking between her 2 children. "Now, hold on, Liam," my Aunt Susan, Uncle David's wife, interjected, stepping forward with a placating hand. "Your uncle has always been so generous. Perhaps you're mistaken about the details." "Mistaken?" I scoffed, the bitterness rising. "Aunt Susan, do you know how many times I ate instant ramen for dinner because that's all I could afford after paying my bills? Do you know how many times I nearly collapsed from exhaustion trying to balance classes and 3 jobs? Do you know how many times I called home, desperate, and was told to figure it out?" My gaze landed back on Uncle David, who was now visibly shrinking. There were no details to be mistaken about, because there was no contribution. My mother, finally finding her voice, stepped forward, her eyes blazing with a mixture of anger and pain. "David, how could you stand there and lie like that? You know how hard Liam worked. You know we struggled to help him, but we couldn't do much. He did this all himself." "Exactly," my father added, his voice low and dangerous. "He earned every bit of that degree. He didn't need your charity, David, and he certainly doesn't need your false claims." Uncle David, cornered and exposed, finally lashed out. I offered to help. You never took me up on it." "You offered once, Uncle David," I corrected, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "4 years ago, when I was applying, you said, 'Let me know if you need anything.' When I sent you a breakdown of tuition costs and asked if you could help with even a small portion, you never replied. Not once. I followed up, and you ignored my calls. That's not an offer, Uncle David. That's an empty gesture." The truth, raw and unvarnished, hung in the air. Other family members, who had always seen Uncle David as the benevolent patriarch, exchanged uneasy glances. Whispers began to ripple through the crowd. Some looked sympathetic towards me, others openly disgusted with Uncle David. My cousin Mark, who was a few years older and had always been skeptical of Uncle David's grand pronouncements, spoke up. "I always wondered, David, you talked a big game about helping everyone, but I never saw much actual help being given out. Liam, I'm so sorry you had to go through that. Aunt Carol, the hostess, who had been standing by, aghast, finally found her voice. David, that's just despicable. To take credit for someone else's monumental effort, especially your own nephew's. What were you thinking? Uncle David, seeing his carefully cultivated image shatter around him, finally snapped. It was just a figure of speech. I meant I supported him emotionally. He blurted, his face still crimson. Emotional support doesn't pay for textbooks, Uncle David. I retorted, the anger still simmering, but now laced with a profound sense of liberation. It felt good to finally say it, to expose the lie that had silently rankled me for years. It doesn't cover rent, and it certainly doesn't put food on the table when you're working until midnight and have an 8 a.m. class. He had nothing left to say. He stood there, a caricature of his former boastful self, his shoulders slumped, his gaze fixed on the ground. Aunt Susan, mortified, tried to pull him away, whispering urgently. The rest of the reunion was, predictably, awkward. The festive atmosphere had been irrevocably punctured. Uncle David and Aunt Susan left shortly after, making hurried excuses about another engagement. The remaining family members clustered around me, offering apologies, words of admiration for my perseverance, and even a few tearful hugs. My grandmother, her eyes still wide with shock, pulled me into a tight embrace. My brave boy, she murmured, stroking my hair, always knew you were special. The incident changed things, subtly but profoundly. The veneer of Uncle David's grand generosity had been stripped away, revealing the self-serving man beneath. While some family members might have continued to enable his inflated ego, many others now saw him for what he truly was. The whispers about his supposed benevolence transformed into murmurs of his deceit. For me, the confrontation was a catharsis. The burden of silently carrying that lie, of hearing him boast about something he never did, had been heavier than I realized. By speaking my truth, I hadn't just exposed him, I had reclaimed my narrative. My achievement, hard-won and entirely my own, now shone brighter than ever. I hadn't needed his money, and I certainly didn't need his false credit. I had survived, I had thrived, and I had done it all on my own terms. And that, I realized, was a far greater boast than any Uncle David could ever conjure. The summer heat still lingered, but a cool, refreshing breeze of honesty had finally swept through Willow Creek.